Whether your beer is in a bottle, can, or glass, kick back and relax. It's Better on Draft.
Welcome, everybody, to the Michigan Beer Series of Better on Draft, episode number 42. My name is Ken. Thank you so much for joining us. I truly appreciate it. We are back in the saddle after a week off for the Fall Beer Festival here in Detroit, Michigan. It's just me and Wendy today, so let's see what Wendy, what are you drinking? Oh, you're playing the show in your background. Remember, we're live.
I know. I usually have it muted. So I am drinking a Boston Lager today, and I'm going to tell you why. So, I spend a little bit of time on TikTok now, and that whole girl math thing has been going crazy, and I've never really understood it, but I think I finally have it figured out. I stopped in at Kroger the other day to pick up something they didn't have at Aldi's, and I saw that they had the Boston Lager on sale. It was $14.99 for a 12-pack. 6-pack is $10.99. And there was also a rebate for $3, right? So I had to purchase the 12-pack because you got the $3 rebate because it made your 12-pack $11.99. So basically, I got a 6-pack of beer for $1, which is basically free. So there we go.
Oh, that is our Wendy. I believe it. I love it. I am here for the girl math for sure. It's fun when you get into things like when say, oh, here's a new pair of earrings. It's $1,000, but there's two of them, so they're $500 each. And then if you wear them, every single day for 3 years straight, that's already basically like 25 cents a day, which is practically free. So that's girl math and everything. I did not girl math. I have the Juneteenth 2023 or 2022, one of the two, from Arctic Circle Brewing. I think that says 16% on there. I don't know if it's a 10 or a 16, but I'm pressing my luck because I'm going to follow that up with the Infusion A coffee porter from Hoppin' Frog over in Ohio. I had a blast touring some Ohio breweries this past weekend as well, which we'll talk about later on. But we have someone to talk about our home, our native land of Michigan beer, specifically Grand Rapids. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and of course, what you're drinking.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Keith Patterson from Manitou Films, and I'm the director and executive producer of a documentary miniseries called Beer City USA. And just want to thank you guys for having me. Tonight I'm drinking The Poet by New Holland, just kind of like a mainstay for kind of like a wintertime beer for me, and the weather's getting cold, so just thought I'd pick up a 6-pack and enjoy it with you guys tonight.
Well, before we get into your upcoming documentary, which we'll have a lot of questions about, I want to hear a little bit about your history. How did you get into the movie making business? What is Manitou? What got you into the industry? What did get you started?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I went to the University of Michigan for film and video studies. And then I moved out to Los Angeles. I was out there for about 15 years. I was a producer and post-production supervisor in scripted television, so comedies and dramas for ABC, NBC, Fox, CBS, the CW, USA, Lifetime, ABC Family, Nat Geo, and Disney XD. So kind of did that for a long time, worked a lot of hours, and then just really wanted to move back to West Michigan and start a family. So moved back here about 6 years ago. I run a creative advertising agency called Creagency, and then I started Manitou Films 2 years ago with the intention of making a documentary television series. So that's kind of my story.
You said document television series. So is there more in the pipeline? Is this your first one, or where does Beer City USA land in this timeline?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first project that I did through Manitou Films was a television pilot called Spirit of the National Parks that we produced up in Sleeping Bear Dunes. And actually going to be taking that to film festivals over the course of the next year. And then Beer City USA is the second project. We're about, I would say, 30% of our way through production right now. And I have a third show called Shipwrecks of the Great Lakes that's just in development right now, so pretty early on.
Plenty of content, and I think a lot of people in Michigan, you know, the stories of Lake Superior, the rough waters, are always very, very interesting. But what made you choose these? Is it all because it's Michigan centric, or do you have a love for these kinds of topics?
Yeah, I definitely love telling stories about Michigan. It's my hometown. And I think what all three series have in common is they're all hybrid genres. So it's part historical documentary and part travel series. So it's just kind of a genre that I'm really interested in doing. And I love history. I love being able to shoot in these really cool places. So yeah, just having a great time.
Now, before I go on to my next question, I do have to ask, are you familiar with who Connor Stallions is for University of Michigan?
I am, unfortunately. Wish I
Are
was
you taking part in anything that he's been doing? You know, supposedly, allegedly filming and recording the signs of other teams.
I can categorically deny anything to do with Connor Stallion's scheme about filming the sidelines of other teams.
All
But
right. Well, you heard it here first. Just because he said he went to U of M does not mean he condones what Mr. Stallions may or may not have done.
well, I'm glad that our rival fan bases are having fun with it, but I don't think it's going to turn out to be the big scandal that everybody thinks it might be. So
I'm just here for the tea. I've been enjoying the talk radio around it, and of course the Facebook posts. But let's get into a little bit about your documentary. So it's Beer City, USA, which is about Grand Rapids, Michigan. What is the story? If you can give us like the 30-second clip, why is Grand Rapids considered Beer City, USA?
sure. So many people in your audience might know that we won a couple of online polls back in 2012 and 2013 that Charlie Papazian put on. And it was a national poll to determine who was the best beer city in the country. In 2012, we actually tied it with Asheville, North Carolina. And then in 2013, we won it outright. And it's just something that I think the citizens of Grand Rapids really rallied around. Obviously, everybody voted enough that we won that title. But then, like our Convention and Tourism Bureau, Experience Grand Rapids, really got behind that brand and promoting it, marketing it, and really bringing a lot of beer tourists into our city. So it's been a great thing. We used to be Furniture City back in the day. That was what we was known for. And today, I think everybody's pretty proud that we hold the title of Beer City.
Do you get any feedback as you're going or making the rounds? I've seen you on a lot of news channels. Obviously, you're on the internet. Any feedback that's potentially negative because Grand Rapids, was Beer City 10 years ago and not necessarily people feel that way today?
No, I don't think so. And actually, it turns out like USA Today readers polls have named us best beer scene and best beer city almost every other year going back these last 10 years, including we just won best beer city again this year from USA Today. So it is something that we're keeping it alive. And that's one of the goals of this documentary too, is just it's one thing to read it in USA Today. And it's another thing to actually go through a documentary medium to go and actually experience what these breweries are like and learn about the history of the city and all that.
Well, you said the history of the city, and your first episode is going to go over a lot of the history of Grand Rapids Brewing. What are some finer points that fans are going to learn when they watch your, documentary here as it gets released?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because, as I mentioned, I'm really interested in history myself. And I learned a lot about the history of our city when I was doing my research for this. A couple of stories. So, the brewing industry started in Grand Rapids in the 1830s by a guy named John Pinnell. He was an English immigrant. There was only a couple hundred people in this little village on the Grand River back at the time. And almost as soon as people moved here, he started just this single barrel brewery. Probably wasn't very good in terms of the quality of the beer. The cleanliness wasn't up to the standards of today and things like that. About maybe a decade later, a guy named Christoph Kusterer, who was a formerly trained brewer from Germany, moved into town. He and John Pinnell worked together for a while, and then Christoph Kusterer ended up buying him out and rebranding it. It was called City Brewery. So as the decades went on and the city grew, there were a number of other breweries that popped up. A lot of them were from the German immigrant community. But it also turns out with the invention of refrigerated rail cars, suddenly you could transport your beer really far distances across the country. And Anheuser-Busch came into town and they built an ice house in downtown Grand Rapids. And that building actually still stands. They were kind of undercutting the price of beer. And the only way that the local breweries could survive is they merged together. So the 6 largest breweries merged together and they formed what they called the Grand Rapids Brewing Company in 1893. And they built a kind of like a Bavarian castle style brewery. And it had a capacity of 600,000 barrels. I believe at the height, they were brewing 250,000, which is just slightly smaller than Founders is today. So it was a really big enterprise, and they were actually doing the same thing. They were shipping their beer. Their flagship beer was called Silver Foam, and they were shipping it all over the Midwest. And at the time, in the late 19th century, they were a rival to Anheuser-Busch. So I think a lot of people don't know that, even people that live in Grand Rapids, but we had a really thriving beer industry before Prohibition. So I thought that was super interesting. And that is just a few of the stories that we're going to cover.
I too am fascinated by the history, so I'm really excited to see it. I was looking over the crowd sharing page, and I noticed that one of the goals for the documentary is to celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion by showcasing a variety of interwoven storylines and featured interviews. Can you give us an example of how you'll do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is really important to us. As a lot of people know, it's the brewery industry itself is not super diverse, even when it comes to women. But we've really taken an active role to go out and really find all of the possible stories in West Michigan. Minority brewery owners like Edwin at City Built, Ramsey Louder, who is the head brewer at the new Grand Rapids Brewing Company. We have members of the LGBT community. And when we talk about intersecting storylines, we'll just take Ramsey for an example. He's the head brewer at Grand Rapids Brewing Company, but he was also paired with a really great home brewer named Ian Purvis, who's the president of Primetime Home Brewers. So if you guys know maybe I'll just explain what the Pro-Am Festival is for people that don't know it. They take award-winning homebrewers, and they have a lottery at the beginning of the summer where they draw names out of a hat, and they pair those homebrewers with breweries. They come up with a recipe, brew it over the summer. It gets judged, and then they announce the winners at the Brews at the Calder Festival, which we filmed that whole process. We filmed the lottery, the home brewing, the judging, and we filmed the festival. That took place on September 30th. It was a really cool event. And, one of the things that we want out of our documentary is to see these characters interacting with each other. Another main theme of ours is how our city has such a great collaboration between the breweries and the home brewing community. And really just everybody wants each other to succeed. Rising tide raises all ships. And that is really, really the case in the brewing industry in West Michigan. It's probably not the case in most other industries. You don't really want your competitors to be thriving. But man, I've heard so many stories about, our refrigeration, like our refrigerator went down, and I called my neighbor brewery and they said, bring your kegs over. You know what I mean? Like that's just not a really common thing that you see in business. So just another kind of cool theme that ties everything together.
That's actually one of my favorite parts about the whole beer industry is that there is so much of that collaboration going on. I did notice too that you're going to be focusing a whole episode on the home brewing. How did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, we really have a thriving home brewing community in West Michigan. And you know, as you know, a lot of the home brewers end up going on to become head brewers at the breweries. And yeah, it's just a really cool thing that all the clubs, the three biggest ones in Grand Rapids are Primetime, Brewskitos, and Rivertown, and just really cool people. They get together generally once a month. Some of them do competitions. They're really just all trying to help each other become better brewers, and you know, giving each other feedback and tasting notes and things like that. And I just thought it was just a really cool kind of subculture to cover it. And you know, we really, our goal for this too is to be kind of the definitive story of beer in our community. And they're obviously one of the lifebloods that make it all thrive. So cheers
So,
to all the home brewers out there.
what was it that what was it that made you decide this was the documentary that you wanted to do as one of you as your second series? Is it? Do you have a beer background?
I don't really, other than just being a beer lover. I've always loved beer. I will say when I lived in Los Angeles, for the majority of the time that I lived out there, it was hard to get Michigan beer. You know, when I started seeing Bell's and Founders show up in some of the specialty shops and then eventually show up on some of the taps around town, it's something that got people really excited. You know, there's a lot of people from Michigan out there. I remember going to a lot of weddings and different events, birthdays and things where people would literally fly out kegs of Oberon and things like that, just because, you know, we're loyal to our brands, and if it's scarce, it makes you want it even more. So every time I would come back, you know, I'd go get a Two Hearted, be one of my first things that I would do. But to answer your question about how I chose this, I was really looking for some kind of story, some kind of long form story to tell about the history of our city. And honestly, it was the very first thing that popped into my mind, because that's what we are. We're Beer City, USA. It's something that we do really well. It makes us unique. It's a cool subject matter with really colorful characters, and it was really just kind of a no-brainer.
What has your favorite interview been so far?
Oh, I don't really want to pick a favorite one because there have been so many good ones. Just to name a few, I think Dave Engbers from Founders is just a really interesting story. All of the struggles that they went through before they really kind of blew up, entrepreneurship struggles and conflict. That's kind of where our conflict comes from in the documentary, what it takes to start a brewery and what it takes to grow it that big. I would say Mayor Rosalind Bliss was a really great interview. She just really, every line she gave us is something usable and just with a great performance. Molly Daniels, who is a professor at Grand Rapids Community College, and she's also one of the brewers at Railtown Brewery. She's just fantastic, and we've kind of become friends since then too. So yeah, just yeah, I don't want to leave anybody out either. We've filmed about 30 hour-long interviews so far. We have about 70 hours of footage, and that we've shot in 11 days. We're going to be shooting another probably 20 to 30 more days before it's all done. So got a couple shoots coming up. We're shooting Hopcat on November 22nd, the day before Thanksgiving. We're going to be shooting Perrin pretty soon. We're going to be up in Bel Air shooting Short's 20th anniversary in April. So excited about that one too. And going back to Grand Rapids Community College in January for their new semester. So yeah, very exciting. It's really been a fun project to work on.
I can imagine. So it can't be cheap to do a project like this. So there is a crowd share on Indiegogo. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Indiegogo campaign, people probably know like Kickstarter and things like that. It's very similar platform. It's specifically for indie filmmakers generally. There are some other projects on there that don't fit that criteria, but most indie filmmakers use Indiegogo. So it seemed like a pretty good place to put our crowdfunding campaign. The other portion of it that we've actually raised the vast majority of our money through is through corporate sponsorships. So Experience Grand Rapids, Lake Michigan Credit Union, the Beer City Brewers Guild, and the Grand Rapids Public Museum, and a number of other businesses have come on as corporate sponsors. So yeah, I would encourage your audience, if you want to support us on the Indiegogo campaign. We're giving away a bunch of Mitten State apparel and beer glasses and tickets to the cast and crew screening, and even a special thanks screen credit at the highest level there. So we'd be very grateful if anybody wants to contribute. I would also say, if anybody has a business that wants to come on as a corporate sponsor, you can go to beercityusa.tv for more information on that.
Fantastic. So do you have anything coming up? So every now and then I get a little fangirlish when we interview somebody. So I'm just wondering, is there anybody that you have scheduled to talk to that you're kind of like, whoa?
Well, I'm meeting with Brett Vanderkamp from New Holland next Thursday as kind of like just to do a pre-interview and scout with them. And I haven't actually met him in person yet, so I am really looking forward to that. New Holland also is just, I'm sure everybody knows who they are. Just a really important part of the fabric of the brewing industry in West Michigan, and really, really looking forward to working with those guys too.
So you've mentioned a couple of breweries outside of Grand Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
I know the focus is Beer City. Are you going to expand a little bit outside of that, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the majority of the breweries that we're going to be filming are in the city of Grand Rapids or the surrounding suburbs, but we are covering Bell's. We're covering New Holland. New Holland does have a location in the city of Grand Rapids as well, but we're also going to do Shorts and Saugatuck and some other breweries just in West Michigan that are kind of, maybe not in the Grand Rapids proper, but certainly a part of the fabric of the brewing industry in West Michigan. So
fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I totally just lost my place.
Oh, you're good. Maybe, I don't know, Ken, do we want to show the audience a sizzle reel? Would this be a good time to do that?
Yeah, sure. Let's get it going, and then we'll come back on the other end of it to continue the interview. This is the sizzle reel. Thanks to Keith for allowing us to show it on here. And if I can find where that actual button is, that's the Indiegogo page.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of tee this up while you're getting it ready too.
We got it.
Yeah, sure. A sizzle reel is kind of like an industry term for a trailer of a project that hasn't been completed yet. So this is kind of a trailer from what we've shot so far.
Beer encompasses humanity. It encompasses history. It's a social beverage. It brings people together. It is a little bit of human history in every glass.
The beer scene in Grand Rapids started slowly, and then all of a sudden it seemed like the snowball got rolling.
In 2013, Grand Rapids, Michigan became known as Beer City USA as a result of a national poll.
Grand Rapids beer has just exploded, and the beer boom is real.
We went from 0 breweries in Michigan to nearly 80 craft producers right here in Beer City on its own.
Guys, come on in, enjoy a beer.
We've been really lucky and fortunate. Founders has grown to be one of the top 10 largest breweries in the United States. But so many other people had similar passions who were doing this a century ago.
People had forgotten the names that were giants in this town.
There's just such a great history of the beer industry in Grand Rapids. It's something that we should all relish.
So this is a chromolithograph of the original brewery. The Grand Rapids Brewing Company really exerted its dominance in the market, and it was such a premier product that it was distributed all over the Midwest.
Prohibition was a death knell.
That's really the beginning of a severe downturn of beer in Grand Rapids that lasted for most of the 20th century.
The Prohibition not just left a scar, but left a legacy that enabled the craft beer boom in the 1980s.
Home-brewed beer is something people are getting immersed in.
Lovely.
The home brewing industry started as a hobby. Larry Bell was very influential.
There's no question. I started drinking Larry's beer when I was 17.
I don't know how Bell's couldn't have inspired all of the breweries that came later.
There's a lot of scars in this.
I instantly felt like I owed people money.
We flirted with bankruptcy for years. I said, if any bank's gonna chain our doors shut, we're gonna make this work. So we had this set of bolt cutters.
The idea that you can create something that you love and share it with other people, I think it's at the heart of the American dream.
Here we are at Grand Rapids Community College. This is our state-of-the-art brewing system. Love the combination of the science, the math, the art.
Making beers that were bigger, bolder, and we just threw away the rule book.
One of the things that we really specialize in is pairing food and beer. If you really do it well, it's something that can really kind of blow people's minds.
You can see I made a giant barley soup.
One of the things that I love about home brewing, I never feel that I've made the perfect brew, and I think my best beer is still ahead of me.
What makes Grand Rapids Beer City, USA is the camaraderie that we all share.
It is a collaboration. Everybody's in it together. A rising tide raises all ships.
The Mitten Brewing Company's mission statement has always been to be a neighborhood craft brewery with a conscience.
We love our neighborhood. We love the community that we're building.
It's an honor to come here to Grand Rapids Brewing Company and make beer every day. Knowing the history of this place, it's still here through prohibitions and pandemics, and we're still standing.
I love beer because it brings people together. It doesn't have to be this momentous occasion. Every day is a celebration that we're here. And it doesn't have to be expensive, but, it has to be great.
All right. Wow. That is an amazing preview for sure. One of the things, especially if you've been following Better on Draft for the past 8 years that we've been doing this, that you would recognize so many people on that, from Linus over at Three Gatos to Edwin from City Built. Plenty of familiar faces. And these are the people that do build the industry and make the industry very welcoming. You definitely got a lot of great people to bring that in. So I'm excited for you to continue to build this up. My question to you is that, so we just watched that, and there definitely felt like there was a lot of home brewing in that. And you actually have a home brewing episode that's going to be focusing on Grand Rapids. I'm guessing Primetime Brewers and other brewers guilds in the Grand Rapids area. But what made you want to focus on home brewing when it almost feels like it's more of a commercial documentary based on the commercialized version of beer?
Oh, well, I would definitely say it's both. It's the home brewing community, it's the breweries themselves, it's entrepreneurship. It's the Grand Rapids Community College Brewing Program has done wonderful things for our brewing industry. People can go in and take those classes for a couple years and get a certificate and get an internship. It's a pretty direct path to working in the brewing industry. Also, we're interviewing city leaders and economists and historians, and we really just want to capture everything that's cool about beer, really, in general. So I think it would be weird, honestly, if we left out homebrewing. It's just such a cool culture of people. And one of the things that I was thinking about when I was watching, I mean, I've seen that sizzle reel a million times, but I've really made a lot of friends in the last year that I've been filming, and it's cool to show up to a festival and everybody knows who you are, and I know all those guys now, and they're all excited that we're there, and I'm excited to be able to help tell their stories. So it's been really fun.
Has any of the homebrewing organizations or even the brewers gotten you into homebrewing yourself?
That's a great question. It's funny because when I first started doing research, I'm like, oh, I should get into homebrewing. And then after I saw the process, when people are doing it really well, Andrew Perry was the guy that he's just kind of got a mad scientist lab in his outbuilding on his property, and I got a little overwhelmed by the amount of time that it would take and all those things. And I know you can buy a kit and start simply, and that's probably how I'm gonna try it, but haven't done it yet. I've got a 1.5-year-old at home. I've got a creative advertising agency, and I've got a television documentary that I'm working on. So not a ton of extra time, but I definitely will try it before we're done here.
One thing that I want to impart, especially on the folks that are looking into home brewing, we had Julia Hers on our show about a year and a half ago. She's actually the president of the American Homebrewers Association. And when we talked to her about what you kind of saw within the video, like the all grain build, you're putting in a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of product in there versus extract. And anything that gets you to brew and home brew and take part of it is a positive experience. And with having a young child, but all these other things, a lot of brewing is kind of like setting it up and waiting. And you get all this time in between, so you should be able to. I'm going to push you a little bit to go buy a kit. We don't want to mention them because they're they definitely are owned by the overlords that is Anheuser-Busch, but Northern Brewer does a great job with kits. You can buy all these products at any home brewing either website or actual homebrew site, like a physical store itself, and you'll be able to go in. So I'm going to push you a little bit that by the time we see you at the Winter Beer Fest in February, that you will have told us that you at least have one batch cooking.
You know what, Ken? I think that's a great goal. I'm going to take you up on that. It's been I've been pushing it off too long, so I'm definitely going to do it.
Well, we talked about the Winter Beer Fest. You actually talked about Calder Fest, which is the Calder Cup, the homebrew pro-am over in Grand Rapids. Are you reaching out to any other beer festivals, events, anything like that to cover during your time recording?
Yeah, I don't have any current plans to shoot more festivals. I think we've done a really good job in capturing the pro-am. We did cover the Winter Beer Fest back in February last year. I suppose we could shoot it again, but I do think we do have budget constraints. We don't have an unlimited budget. We've been raising money as we go. We've raised $100,000 out of a goal of $300,000 to finish the series. So yeah, I think it would just depend as far as including any more festivals. It would just depend on how much money we raise and how many more days we can shoot. So
there is one coming up right now in Grand Rapids. I don't know if you're going to be able to make it because I believe it's only in 2 weeks, but it's the Grand Rapids. I believe it's Wine and Spirits Festival. Which they do some beer, like they have their own beer area, but it's definitely a great thing. And the one thing you'll get in there is that you'll see the interproductional community. because you're going to get your New Holland, which also does spirits, and all these other breweries that do spirits, but you're going to be able to see all these organizations that kind of work in the same alcohol sector and bond together, talk together, collab together, especially when a lot of these places that like breweries might not have their own wine, so they need to buy wine and bond or booze and bond that they can sell inside. So definitely a suggestion, even if you go there as a fan, buy a ticket. Even for the Winter Beer Fest, go as a fan. You know, I've worked so many of these festivals that you don't get that fan experience, festival experience, because you're like, oh, I got to go see Linus over at tent 1 to say hi at Three Gatos, and then Levi, who's in tent 4 with Archival. Make sure you at least take some fun into this.
We are going to be there. Jeremiah Zimmerman, who's the president of the Beer City Brewers Guild, got me a booth with the breweries. So we're going to be talking about the documentary. I don't have any plans to shoot it, but we are going to be there doing outreach towards the public, fundraising, and really just hanging out and have a good time with everybody. So I'm really excited about that one.
Well, then I don't need to sell you on it anymore. Okay, sorry. Somebody actually posted in our YouTube page. We do record live every single Friday, 7:15 p.m. Eastern, saying that AB divested from Northern Brewer a few years ago. So I'm guessing they're okay. So you can go buy your Northern Brewer kit and not feel guilty about supporting Anheuser-Busch. As much as we don't love or hate the organization, some people want to buy local, some people want to support craft. So we want to make sure we give them the proper information. But let's learn a little bit about you real quick. You're drinking the Poet. That's a great beer. What are some of your favorite styles, beers, that kind of things that kind of get you going when you go to a Hopcat? Like, what are you looking for?
Sure. I really do like a variety of styles. Obviously IPAs. I do like hazy IPAs. I like porters and stouts. But really I'd say in the last few months, I've really been going back to lagers and Weiss beers. It's something that, like more traditional style. The Kuster Original at Cedar Springs Brewing Company is one of my favorite beers now. And it's been cool to work with Dave Ringler on this. And it's just super clean. Not, obviously only 4 ingredients, and man, it's delicious. It's amazing what they can do with just 4 ingredients.
Yeah, a lot of people, including Linus, will make sure like his beer is Reinheitsgebot. If you got a good interview with him, his training is just so crazy, coming from Brazil, moving to Germany, and then of course opening up where Nitzigen used to be, which is now Three Gatos. But I'm going to pass it back to Wendy. She is ready to ask you a few more questions.
So I'm just curious if there's a story that you can share with us to kind of give us a little peek at what's to come.
In terms of like what we're going to be shooting, or so we're going to be shooting another probably 15 breweries. Just more historians, more city leaders, economists. We're also doing a lot of lifestyle shooting. So like this winter, we really want to paint a picture of what it's like to live and enjoy beer in West Michigan. So it's not just sitting in a tap room, it's doing all the things that you would do in your normal life. I mean, ice skating and skiing, like downhill skiing, and then go and have a beer in the lodge, ice fishing, that'll be this winter, and a number of other ones. Obviously the lake culture is really big here in the summertime. So we're going to be doing a lot of lifestyle shooting around those, and really kind of, seeing these beers in their natural environment. In terms of the production, we will hopefully be done shooting in June or July, and then it's going to take us 4 to 6 months to edit it. So we're going to be aiming for January of 2025 to have it completed. Then we're going to be taking it to film festivals and then partnering with a sales agency to get domestic and international distribution, hopefully on a major streaming service.
Well, that was going to be my next question, but I do have a quick question. I do wonder, what is it that you think makes a good beer city?
Well, first the beer, and yeah, I think variety too. I mean, for me as a beer lover, to be able to have so many breweries all within a certain distance, with so many different styles, and there's I I'm not I don't have a gluten intolerance, but there's a Brewery Nix, which makes all gluten-free beer. Um, and there's breweries that specialize in IPAs. Cedar Springs, as we talked about, is doing German styles and things like that. So really, yeah, just a variety. Also, just a really welcoming community. We're all Midwesterners, and that's kind of what we do. We welcome people in. We're really friendly to people, and not cynical. I try not to be cynical in my life, and I don't want my work to show any of that stuff either. Beer City USA, we're not looking for any controversy. Like as I mentioned, the conflict in the documentary is going to come from entrepreneurship struggles, but also outside challenges like prohibition and the COVID-19 pandemic, and how breweries responded to that. So yeah, it's part historical documentary. So we're doing the entire timeline going back to the 1830s, but all the way up through, from 1985 when Bell's was started, and then 97 when Founders in New Holland started. And then, the explosion of craft breweries over the last 20 years is all part of the historical timeline. And then the travel segments is actually going in to these breweries, seeing how they're unique, what they do differently, meeting the owners and head brewers and staff members and customers, and really just kind of enjoying ourselves. So
That's actually my favorite part of traveling to see the other breweries or all the breweries is just to see how different they all are and how they have their own unique stamp in their community. I love that. Are you going to touch on any other forms of alcohol in the documentary, or are you just going to stick with beer?
Only when we will touch on it, but we're not covering any cideries or meaderies or wine or anything like that. Several of the breweries also are distilleries. So we will cover a little bit as it relates to the breweries, but beer is our main focus. I've kind of been joking with people because obviously trends change all the time, and seltzer is a big thing now. I'm not a big seltzer guy myself. I personally think it's kind of a fad. I mean, no one talks about Zima anymore. So I think it's going to come and go. The other thing is beer was the first one, right? It was the very first one. It's always going to be with us. I kind of knew this beforehand, but I've had a couple of historians just give it to me in our interviews without any prompting. But civilization may have started because of beer. I don't know if you guys have heard that before, but turns out all over the world, as soon as people started settling down, there's evidence of beer right away. And a lot of people used to think it was that we settled down because of bread, but beer actually predates bread by a couple thousand years. So it was a highly desirable product that people wanted a consistent supply of. And it may be one of the reasons that we actually formed cities in the first place. So it's kind of a cool fact. And I think beer it's pretty universal, and it's something that really makes us human. So
That's for sure. Do you have any soft spots personally for any other type of alcohol?
I like whiskeys and bourbons and scotch. That's kind of my go-to. I like tequila in the summertime. I do like a glass of red wine with dinner, things like that. But if you caught me on a random day, I'm probably drinking a beer. So
If you're watching on the video, which of course all of our videos are on youtube.com/better on draft, you might have seen that I got up real quick. And the reason for that is that as you were talking about kind of how beer, settlements and everything like that, there is a book, and it is a fun book to read, which is called The Comic Book Story of Beer. And this is a great resource, not necessarily for historical reasons, but it's also the fact that it is in full comic book form. So
cool.
if you are like me, who is not necessarily very good at reading books, would prefer audiobooks versus reading, it goes through everything from getting paid in beer, the Egyptians, obviously, the presidential election to end prohibition, and fun stuff like that. So go check out, they don't sponsor us. We don't get anything from this. I don't get anything from this. But the comic book story of beer is a great resource to kind of get a more international history of beer. Back to you, Wendy.
That sounds
So,
like a cool Christmas present to give somebody, to be honest.
I know. I was like, how do I not have that already? But Ken's a little nerdier than I am when it comes to stuff like that.
I went to, so in Michigan, there's a comic book company called the Vault of Midnight. There's one in Detroit, one in Ann Arbor. And when I went to the Detroit one, there was 3 of these. There was the comic book of beer, the comic book of wrestling, and the comic book of video games. And for those who listen to the show, that's basically me in a circle. That is a Venn diagram of 3 things that basically make a circle. So I bought all 3. I have all 3. They're all spread out throughout the house. But the beer ones with all my beer books behind me on my bookshelf.
So through your chats with all of the brewers that you've gone through so far, what do you see in the future of craft beer? Maybe a new style or a new brewery concept?
I do think that people are going to continue to innovate. A lot of people have talked about that. I also think, I know there's been a dip, and the dip even started kind of before COVID when it comes to consumption of craft beer. But I also think it is still relatively new category. It wasn't even legal until a couple decades ago. 1978 is when Jimmy Carter signed HR 1337, which legalized homebrewing. And then the first microbrewery licenses started being issued in the early 80s. And so, yeah, I think it's something that, we grew up with. And in terms of market share, I don't think they're even close. When they keep chipping away at big domestic beer, I think the category is certainly going to continue to grow. So I think the future is great. Like I said, I think these fads like seltzers and things tend to come and go, but beer's always going to be here. And the fact that we're legally allowed to make, produce, and sell craft beer, that I think we can all agree, and probably your audience agrees, just is just really better than the big 3. So yeah, I think the future is bright.
So on the show here recently, we've talked about venues where they should sell beer. Ken is a big proponent of there should be a bar in the hospital. There was just a laundromat that opened up with one. What venue do you think they should sell beer at that they don't currently?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is college football games. I believe Michigan State started doing it, and I know Michigan is talking about it right now. There's pros and cons. Obviously, they don't want students or people to get too drunk at those games. But I've heard the alternative to that is maybe it will cut down on binge drinking before they go in. You know what I mean? If you have to sit in a cold stadium for 4 hours without a beer, you're not, you might be chugging too many before you walk in, where if you can buy a couple while you're there, it may smooth things out. But I don't think we're really going to know until they try it.
There was a study. Only one study has been done on alcohol drinking in a facility, and this was for colleges in Canada, where they did this. It's the only study that's ever been done on this. So even the current high or college campuses that allow for drinking at the games, because Big Ten just approved it, but other colleges have allowed it for a little bit. I agree with you, but my friend who is he is a traffic nerd. He has a doctorate, and his dissertation was on Michigan lefts. That is not a joke. There is no pun line. His dissertation, which he defended, is on Michigan lefts.
I'm a fan
is against it. and he talks about like there really isn't enough data, and I believe the same as you. I think it will curb the binge drinking outside of the stadium, knowing that you can go because you're going to chug that last beer. You're going to take a beer for the road. You know, when you walk into the game, you're going to chug an extra beer before you get into the game. Like all of these things lead up to it. And I think having the beer inside the stadiums or alcohol inside the stadiums won't curb, I would say, binge drinking, but I think it will help alleviate and elongate when people drink, knowing full well, like, you know, we're all of age, meaning that when we go tailgate, we could go drink at the venue. So we don't have to chug, drink, and do everything. So I agree with you. Some people who are in the traffic world do not, because of course they believe in a world with no, drunk driving or anything like that. So of course they're going to be against it. Judy in our Facebook page said IKEA, getting a beer before you, maybe a beer before you get into IKEA, maybe, one as you get out, halfway point.
I love it, but I never make it out of the maze.
I think a bar in the halfway point, like one at the beginning, one in the halfway point, and then maybe one at checkout when you're going to find your things in the giant area. I've only been to. Go on.
What about Meijer? I wouldn't mind having a beer while I'm walking around shopping for groceries.
Right?
Yeah, that would.
I remember Whole Foods in Detroit had it for a little bit, and I think they ended it. But Giant Eagles in Ohio, a lot of them allow it, where you can drink while you're shopping, and a lot of them had a little cup holder for your beer in your shopping cart.
Makes sense to me.
Horrocks in Lansing and Grand Rapids allows you to drink while you're shopping. It was fantastic. I had a blast. Bought a little more than I probably should have, but that's why. It works.
The Tagger Brew account, I'm guessing that might be Debbie, former guest of the Better on Draft podcast, said, like beer inside the stadiums, would love to see them source local craft beers, which I definitely agree with. And Gary is saying, airport beers. I think we get beers in the airport. We get he thinks maybe getting a beer to walk the airport. So, you don't have to stay in the bar. Maybe that's what he's thinking. Like it wouldn't be too bad to be able to like grab a beer because I got to go all the way to the end of the Delta terminal, and instead of taking the air tram, I want to walk it. So maybe that's good. So as we end each and every show, we're going to give you the opportunity. We'll make sure your information, of course, is in the show notes, including the Indiegogo website, in case you want to donate and support the craft brewery. But we like to ask a fun question, a question that kind of lightens the mood before we go. So my question to you, Keith, it is the Winter Beer Fest. We are outside in the elements. You can face me one-on-one in a fun drinking game of either cornhole or foaling. What are you going to play me in?
Cornhole. I'm pretty good. Not going to lie.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Do you practice? Do you have a set at home, or is it just one
of
those?
I actually built my own boards.
Right.
And they're my dad painted them for me. So I've got a vintage Michigan logo on one and a vintage Michigan State logo on the other. So something we like to do all summer, and just a fun game, and really wouldn't ever do it without a beer. So
that's the way to go.
Right.
You can only, hang in one hand, beer in the other. Wendy, what's your final question?
My final question for the night is, if you were to get more funding than you expected, what would you add that you don't already have in the plan for recording?
I think if I exceeded my fundraising goal, I would spend the remainder on marketing. So, and we do have a plan for that. Experience Grand Rapids and some other people are going to come in once we actually get distribution to really get it out there. But marketing does not hurt. It's also an area that a lot of indie filmmakers don't think about when they make it. There's really nothing left over, and they've made their movie and they get distribution, but the distributors generally don't do that for you. So it would be helpful to have, you know, a billboard campaign, some targeted advertising, things like that. So
Fantastic.
Well, here is your time for advertising prowess, your 30-second elevator pitch. Tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, if anybody wants to watch that sizzle reel again, and for more information on our Beer City USA documentary, you can go to beercityusa.tv.
That is going to do it for the Michigan Beer Series, episode 42. My name is Ken, for my co-host Wendy, for our guest Keith. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday night. And no matter what you think of your beer, we think it's better on draft. Have a good night.
Cheers.
Thank you, guys.